Welcome in again, everybody, to the Auburn Undercover Podcast. Today's guest is former Auburn Athletic Director Jay Jacobs and our legend in residence, Philip Marshall.
That just means old man in residence.
How long you been doing it, Philip?
October will be 56 years.
Man. So you started when you were 4? You started when you were 4
Yeah,
years old?
right. I wish.
Man, oh man.
Well, Philip,
You may have been the first person when I walked on at Auburn to be the first person that interviewed me.
Probably was.
Yeah.
Probably was.
Yeah, you ran out of things to write about, so you came and talked to me.
That's what year did you walk on?
1981.
Oh, that's 44 years ago.
Man, oh man. Seems like yesterday.
time flies.
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Time does fly. You really see it in your children. I know, Philip, you see it in your grandchildren. Man,
Yeah.
time just gets away from you. Everybody just needs to stop sometime and smell the roses. It's hard to do in this fast-paced world we're in with all this social media and everything that goes on. But,
You know, it's funny because it was kind of sobering when I started covering the children of people I had covered when they were in college.
yeah.
And now it's grandchildren.
Yeah.
I think they just look at me and say, man, he's old. And they're right.
Oh, man. Just keep doing what you're doing, brother.
For a while.
Yeah.
It's my problem is when the subject of retirement comes up, I don't know what I would do. And so I can keep on as long as I feel good and feel like I'm able to do it. And however long that is, we'll see.
Man, you gotta keep doing something, Philip.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I don't think it would be good for me just to sit around the house and watch TV or whatever.
It wouldn't.
He loves to be on the message board, though.
Yeah, right.
Philip, we're going to talk about facilities today. You want to jump in with a question?
Well, I was. It's just interesting to me the what facilities, new facilities, upgraded facilities, whatever, how important that is. One, and two, Jay, obviously you're the one that can address this. The challenges of for any AD in deciding what needs to be done and the challenges of getting those things done.
Yeah. A lot of people may not realize it. If they think about it, they would. Was that Auburn was the first school in the SEC to have a football building. We built the athletic complex and then moved it in 1989. Nobody else had one of those. We were all in the Coliseum together with everybody else, and Coach Dow was the athletics director and the head football coach, and he realized how important it was to have a facility that you could show recruits, come in and say, this is completely dedicated to you and making you a better player. And then we, because of the Louder family, we're able to attach an academic building to that, the Charlotte Louder Academic Facility next to it, attached them. And anyway, it became a unbelievable facility. Well, now, I was at Florida when we built one down there, and Auburn just recently built one. The facilities are important. It was interesting, Philip and Ronnie, that I read something just in the last day or two about a coach interviewing some players that had transferred. And a couple of those guys said, with NIL, coaches aren't coaching me as hard. They're concerned about, upsetting me and my teammates getting upset. But, great players still want to be coached hard, and great players still want to be developed. So when it comes to the facilities, there may be a mindset which may not be far off at some institutions that, you know what, we don't need to build any more facilities. We're just going to pay them NIL and we'll figure it out. Well, if the playing field is level and everybody's paying NIL, you still need something to separate yourself. And oftentimes it's facilities. I think that what has happened over the last 20 years or more or so is that we've all turned our attention to, from not just for facilities for the current student athletes and for potential student athletes, we've also turned our attention to how do we keep fans coming to games, updating our facilities so that people will enjoy coming to ball games. And that's what I've seen. You know, we were talking before we got on the air about baseball. That what they've done at Auburn with that facility is incredible.
It really is.
It is a beautiful, and have 7,500 people in there this past weekend was a great experience. So, and that's good for the players too.
Oh, they love it. They love it.
Yeah. What did they have to say about it, Philip?
Just how much the atmosphere and how much it means to them, and how much it adds to. I mean, it's baseball is a funny sport to me because you don't want guys out there banging heads and getting all riled up. You won't focus, but I don't think there's any question that an atmosphere like was at Auburn last weekend, and I'm sure will be again this coming weekend, it helps the home team. It may not help the home team as much as like basketball because sports are so different, but it definitely, and it has an impact on the visiting team too. And, the Central Connecticut State coach, after they lost to Auburn, he said that his words were, he said he really praised the facility and praised the campus and everything, and then he said this is a little bit out of our realm at Central Connecticut, and he said he was proud of his players for competing. He said, but I don't believe they'll ever forget this day. Just having the opportunity to experience it, and it really is. It's reminiscent to me of LSU or Arkansas that doesn't have quite as many seats as those places, but in that there is a unique, special atmosphere to play in there, and the players really appreciate it. Like I said,
yeah, and there's a tremendous level of excitement for the fans, because that atmosphere is not there without the fans and the seats and the premium seats all the way to general admission. What Auburn has done, packing those people in there, it's incredible. I mean, it is really incredible. They've done it right. If that all that adds together when it comes to facilities, you can recruit, prospects to that. You can have a home field advantage, and you can make it really nice for the fans, because if the fans aren't there, it's an empty, hollow place. None of that happens. And so, the facilities, some people think that, why do we spend millions of dollars on facilities? Well, some student athletes still want to be developed. Okay. And those are usually the difference makers. And so you're still going to have to, keep doing facilities, but you've also got to balance that out with, adding amenities and premium seating for fans, because they have a certain level of expectation now when they go to other places. Y&R's that way. So I'm excited that Auburn is looking at doing something in the north end zone. And you ask about how hard it is. It's difficult to get an athletic project off the ground on a campus, because you have people that maybe not have a business background and don't completely understand, the intangibles of having a facility like that. And, what you do is, if you say, what we'll do, we'll just take 3 of our games, our home football games, to neutral sites. I mean, heads would explode on campus, because that's a great weekend that everybody on campus uses to recruit. I'm not talking about athletics. I'm talking about everybody outside of that. Auburn University Foundation recruiting donors, admissions recruiting students. The band is recruiting bands. I mean, it's just a great atmosphere and a great place. And it's really important to the institution when you have it going. but it's challenging to get it going because, you're not getting any money from the institution. You're having to raise it all yourself.
Right.
But and then some of those facilities you can't show a return on the investment, like a football athletic complex. That's why you have to reach out there to like a Walt and Ginger Waltos,
Right.
and or Bill and Connie Neville
Yeah.
to make a big gift, to get that thing off the ground, and then everybody else will sort of catch up and say, okay, this does make a difference. But Auburn has done a fantastic job with the architecture on campus. Man, you come in here and it still looks like a traditional place. Everything looks like it matches.
Right.
There may be one or two exceptions, but athletics has always been, what we want to compliment what's going on campus.
I did a story on the Anna Lee Adams, the softball freshman who hit 400 this year and was a freshman All-American and all those things. And she said that when she visited campus for the first time, she said her mother said that her eyes just got big. And she said, I loved it from the first time I saw it, even before I saw the softball facilities. And she said, I knew that this is where I'd want to be if I didn't play softball. That this is where I want to be. So it does all go together. And also you mentioned the basketball arena. There's, to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, to me, I mean, you could have some kind of balance sheet and say, well, you spent this much, but it has helped create something that is very valuable to the university, to the athletic department, and everything else, which is the program Bruce Pearl has built, and I think that I remember. See, I'm so old. I remember when Beard Eves first opened as Memorial Coliseum, and like a lot of things, this is something I was thinking about. You were talking about first Auburn was the first one to have a football complex. It seems to me that what happens then is everybody else builds one, and you were first, and now you're last.
That's right.
or
right.
Somewhere close to that, because everybody's building nicer and better things as you go.
That's exactly right.
But I know you try, and I should have mentioned Neville Arena at the start. You certainly had a lot to do with that too. And but in both cases, baseball and basketball, they are built in a way that that maximizes the impact fans can have on games, and I think that's important too. I know you tried on the north end zone and found it not to be easy. But it's all. And tell me if I'm wrong about this. I've always thought projects like that, where your premium seats that people pay a lot for, eventually it'll pay for itself.
No doubt about it. That's exactly what they're doing right now. Is it will pay for itself. They're gonna have a pro forma that demonstrates that it will pay for itself. But yeah, we tried the north end zone, and obviously I didn't do a good enough job painting a vision for it. But that got shut down. But thank goodness now they're moving forward with it. But things take time.
Right.
I mean, I remember we opened the west side, upper decks, I guess in 86 or 87. I can't remember. We opened it with Texas coming in here. We may have been one of the first schools with suites on the sideline. I don't remember many that did, but they do.
On the sideline on the field, you mean?
No. Our original suites on the east side.
The suites were they were put in, I think, when they enlarged 80. It was they were approved. I remember after y'all lost to Alabama in '84.
Right.
I don't know why I remember that, but I do. And yeah, y'all were among the first ones for sure. Yeah. And that's it's. I've always found college athletics to be an interesting thing. people say, well, it's a business. Well, yeah, it's a business, but it's a very different kind of business, and that has to have people with who have lots of money willing to donate lots of money. And that's more true now than it's ever been with NIL and all this stuff. So I've always found that to be, I just think that people sometimes think that it ought to be run like some corporation, and it's just not the same thing.
It's not. You're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, but fortunately, we have those times on campus where the leadership and everybody is together, and you can move things forward because everybody has understanding. And from my perspective, it's as good as it's been since the '80s on Auburn's campus with the leadership.
I agree.
But a couple of things. One is that going back to Neville Arena and what Bruce has done. One way you can quantify that is I'll never forget when we went to the national championship in 2010, played out there in Arizona, coming into a meeting at the beginning of the year after that game, and sitting around the president's cabinet table, they were talking about how many additional applications they had for enrollment.
Right.
The exposure that we got from that was unbelievable. And Bruce is getting it every day, and now baseball's getting it every day. And so you can't, if you were trying to pay for marketing for an institution, for Auburn University, you couldn't afford the kind of marketing we're getting. The second piece is that some of our listeners may not remember where we were and how we got to where we did. I mean, Beard East Memorial, we couldn't ever fill it up. It was just in spurts. It had about 10,500 seats, I believe, Philip. And
well, it was 12,500 before Cliff put his curtain up.
Okay. That's right. 12,500.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And people may not remember, but that Coliseum was designed with an indoor track.
Right. That's what I was
about
to
say. The seats were a pretty good distance from the floor, except when we had those pull-out seats. What were you going to say, Philip?
Just that same thing. That it was, and to be fair, so was Memorial Coliseum, now Coleman Coliseum in Alabama. It was built the same way as an all-purpose facility, not just a basketball facility. And in both cases, I mean, sure, if you fill it up, it's noisy and all that stuff, but I think Jeff Lebo actually had a lot to do with the design of Neville Arena. He never got to coach in it, but he had a lot to do with the design of Neville Arena, which is the fans are there, and of course the biggest thing is how good is the team that plays there, and Bruce is. We could do 5 shows on what Bruce Pearl has done to create what is now one of the great atmospheres and a national contending program that's been on the verge twice now of winning a national championship. If he can, I hope it'd be great if before he retires, if he could make that last step.
It would be.
And win it all. But I asked our friend Joe Champy one time a couple of years ago, because he went to the national championship game 3 times and came up short every time. I said, how long did it take you to get over that? And he said, don't know. I haven't gotten over it yet.
I understand. I was out in California watching the men's golf team, and Nick Leonard, after we lost, he came up to me. He said, when you get here, you think you should win it every year. And he said, we won a national championship last year, and I'm so disappointed. I mean, it will take forever to get over it. But I tell you, going back to leadership, the late Jimmy Sanford, who was on our board, I was walking out of the baseball arena the other day. Hey, and for our younger listeners, Coach Joe Champy was a women's basketball coach here, and he had unbelievable teams in the 80s. as Philip said, went to 3 Final Fours and played for championships. But the late Mr. Jimmy Sanford, he's the one that got the baseball thing done. For you listeners that don't know it, we used to have aluminum stands and porta potties. That's what we had at baseball. And we had a group of people that the way it was designed, we had a chain link fence down the first base side. People would pull up and park a school bus and sometimes a U-Haul rental truck and climb up on top of it, and that's how they would see the game. I mean, so, a lot of things has changed, and I'll never forget when we designed the arena, and we went all over the country looking at different arenas. We went to Cameron Indoor and said, how can we get these sight lines and still be within code? And my former teammate and architect, Yan Cowart, was there with us. And anyway, our hope, where we came from was that we were at a place playing basketball where you could almost talk across the court to another fan.
Right.
And we said, how can we design this thing so it's tight and everybody has a great seat when there's not many people here, because we haven't had a history where there's a lot of people here. And I'll never forget walking out of the football stadium after we got that approved. And some gentleman came up and said, man, y'all are wasting a lot of money. And he said, y'all are going from 12,500 to 9,000 seats. This doesn't make any sense. But it all worked out. And so just people need to remember how we got to where we are. And
it's Plainsman Park before 1997. It was when we covered games, there wasn't enough room for the press in the press box, so they just had like a wooden bar thing where you could sit a laptop or whatever right up in the stands. And one of my colleagues has got his laptop sitting there, and all of a sudden he bumps it, and it just goes straight through the stands, because there was all the way down, and just you could hear the plastic breaking and everything else. And he just sat there and looked down and just he was speechless. He didn't know what to say. But I'm surprised that didn't happen to me, as clumsy as I can be. But yeah, I mean, and now it's even much better than it was then. And it was at that time, I think it was voted by one poll or something, the basically the prettiest college baseball stadium in the country. And now with 6,000 seats and all those premium seats and the amenities and all those things, it's really special. And I think that they're getting. I know Doc Goodlett has moved out to the football complex, the new complex, and where he was, they're working right now. That's where the baseball offices are going to be. They're kind of going. I asked Gabe Gross last night. I said, where's y'all's office right now? He said, we don't have one. He said, wherever we can find to sit down. And but they're really looking forward to it, because that's going to be really nice too, and for the coaches. Yeah. And it's to me. But here's my, I guess, one more facilities question, Jay, is, I mean, obviously you talk about those metal bleachers. They're now the soccer bleachers,
right?
And the softball stadium is not on par with the best programs. How do you? Is it just a matter of finding somebody who loves those sports and has enough money to help you build something new? It
is. It really is. And the coaches that buy into that vision and create enthusiasm for the sport. Those are the two main ingredients. Erlen and Betty McWhirter gave us the largest gift ever in the 90s, and we built the McWhirter Gymnastic Facility because they saw it and they believed in it. And look where our gymnastic program is now. Yeah. And so you just, and gymnastics wasn't on anybody's radar at the time.
No.
They just cared about it. And well, they care about everything Auburn, but in this particular case, they saw a desperate, we were way behind, and they came in and gave us the money to build that facility, just because. So that's a perfect example, Philip, of what you're talking about, is that, the coach's enthusiasm, and to get, the fans encouraged and enthused, and then, a donor or some donors saying, you know what, I want to make an impact here. I want to change the trajectory of this program. And that's what's happened across campus, not only in athletics, but, everywhere else on campus too. I mean, look at the Jay and Susie Gooch Performing Arts Center. Who would have ever thought we would have had something like that here? It's amazing. So all those things are about relationships and trust, and, people believing in the Auburn creed. We're going to do what's right and work hard and love our neighbor.
It's interesting. One thing, kind of all of a sudden, you were talking about coaches not coaching as hard, coaching players is hard.
Yeah.
I had a long visit with Hugh Freeze a couple of weeks ago now, and he told me that he said it was affecting me, and I decided that just couldn't be. And he said he said he is, as far as financial things, NIL and all those things, dealing with players, he said, I don't do it. He said, Will Redmond and his people do it. He said, I would come in here and there'd be players lined up and they all wanted to talk about the same thing. And he said, it was really affecting me. And he said, so I don't do that anymore. And he said, I told the players at the start of spring practice, I don't know how much you make. I don't care how much you make. What I know is that I think this is probably not 100% correct, but the most expensive racehorse doesn't always win the race, and I'm the one that decides which horse gets to run.
Exactly.
So I do think that's an issue, though. I think it's an issue that kind of brings us up to another thing I wanted to talk about. Summertime, college football, off season, pretty different now than it was when you were around.
There's no such thing as off season now. I mean,
yeah.
when we were all in school, we'd go home for the summer and work to make some money. And but now you can even, Ronnie, you may even have children participate in this. I mean, I know I've got family friends and family that, they get on a travel team and they play all year long, whatever the sport is. And
mine does soccer.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't want to take that away from them. You want them to enjoy it and, participate. But there is no off season now. I mean, I think every one of our sports, they've got stuff going on campus right now. It's June. What is it today? June the 2nd or June the 3rd? And
right.
I mean, there is no off season. There is no downtime. We used to get to through spring practice. We'd have an A-Day in April. We sort of had May that we'd run and work out a little bit, but it wasn't brutal. Sort of got your legs back under. Then you come back in and run a test in August, and here we go. But man, now kids are out there throwing and doing things all the time. And you know what? That's just what you have to do to compete now.
Right. But it was once you got back, it was a little different than it is now too. In those days, I mean, no two-a-days now, no time limit. There are time limits. You didn't have time limits when you played, did you?
No. I'll never forget, Philip. We go home, I think, in the summer of 81. And no. Yeah, the summer of 82. And we come back and they put lights on the practice field. Because it used to be that at least night would make them stop. Well, now they got lights on the practice field. There wasn't any, we thought, holy smoke, these people, they're trying to kill us. But hey, everybody needs to understand that there's no complaining. It's just different. I mean, we had 3-a-days, and that was a common thing. And then sometimes we would have 4-a-days, but just understand now that fourth one was no pads. We would go to the baseball field and just walk through formations at 9:00 at night, and then be back on the practice field at 6 the next morning. That was just what we did. That's what everybody did. That's what the competition did. That's what everybody did. And that's just the way it was. There was no 20-hour rule. There was no, we could go for 2 days in shorts. And then the third day, you could go in shorts in the morning and then go full pads in the afternoon on the third day. And here you go. So anyway, the game, the preparation for the game has changed. And I think it's all for the better and for the health and well-being of the student athletes. I think that, some of the stuff we do doesn't make any sense. And this is sort of changing the subject, but like, why are we having official visits that last 48 hours? Why are we doing that? I mean, no coach enjoys it. Players are, prospective players want to come in. 24 hours is enough. It'd save you half your budget instead of having to spend, 2 nights of a hotel and feeding people. I mean, why do all that? They can take as many visits as they like on their own. So why are we spending that time? So things have changed, and practice has changed, and all those type things have changed, and it's for the betterment. It's for the betterment of the game. So we're adjusting well, and it's really good to hear. I could understand how a coach, Hugh or any coach, this is a new world for them. I mean, could you imagine being a business person? And you having a staff of people, you're responsible for their execution of their job, and them making more money than you and holding things over your head. How do you manage those people? It's the same thing for a coach. At some point, you just get to the end of your rope and say, you know what, the heck with this. I got to do this with my personality and my style, and just let the chips fall where they may. And I know that the basketball coach at Auburn and the baseball coach at Auburn are already there. And I'm pretty sure the golf coach and a lot of others are already there. That, you know what, we're going to just we're going to coach the way we coach, and we're going to take care of our guys and ladies as best we can, but let the chips fall where they may. And that's what you have to do to be able to coach with your personality.
Yeah, it's you talk about it. You're responsible for all those employees. If you're in a business, just think if all those employees were 19 or 20 years old on top of that.
I understand. Yeah. So it's challenging, but I think everybody's now adjusting and seeing what this new way is. And people may not like NIL, but that's just where we are. I watched softball yesterday. Watched a young lady pitch and going to the College World Series in women's softball, and she's getting $1 million reportedly on NIL. You know what? You may not like it, but that's just where we are. And so, if we want to win and it's important to us, we can still do it with integrity and follow the Auburn creed and treat people the way we want to be treated. But NIL is a decision maker for a lot of families because it's a life-changing thing for them.
Yeah, I think that's really true in sports where a lot of players come from disadvantaged circumstances. That is very important to their families. But it's interesting to me, and this because I was curious to see how this would be. But I watched Najee Kennedy, who you mentioned, the Texas Tech pitcher, yesterday, and celebrating after the game after they had won, and she was just all into it. And I don't see that. I still see college kids acting like college kids. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Even though the money is there, I still see college kids acting like college kids. You watched the Auburn players in the dugout last weekend, and I'm glad to see that because I wasn't sure what it would be. I'm astonished by how much money some people are reportedly getting. And I take all that with a grain of salt. I think it's true about the softball pitcher because the person who's the extraordinarily wealthy person who made it happen said it was. So, but how about that, Jay? And you got at Texas Tech, you got this multi-billionaire who has essentially said, I'm going to make sure Texas Tech becomes a national power. And he's well on his way to doing it. Is that an issue?
I think it's just a fact. I mean, I don't think it's an issue, but there are other pieces have to come into play. How you started off talking about, coaches still have to coach. We still have to have facilities. So that's a piece of it. Getting the right student athlete on campus. That's the start of it. But then you better be developing them and coaching them and putting winners around them. So, you could sort of boil it back to, Philip, I'm just thinking about this, is that, you know what? Okay, here are the 25 we have. All right. So who's going to do a better job developing? Because once they get their NIL money, that doesn't make them perform any worse or better. Right. So now we have to develop and put a team together. And so it's just a recruiting tool, that they're using to get to where they are. And it's just competition. That's what that's just where we are right now.
Jay, how do you manage different projects? Like, how do you decide, okay, well, I've got this much money, I've got this many donors. How do you manage going back to the same donor versus cultivating new donors, basketball versus football versus baseball versus non-revenue sports?
Yeah. Hey, Ronnie, can I come back and ask you just say, I want to hit on one other thing Philip said about the student athletes, these young people having fun. My experience has been 100% of the time has been the adults are the ones that are making it hard. Yes. What I mean by that, y'all, is that my experience, my firsthand experience it has always been a parent, guardian, or handler that is causing the chaos around NIL at institutions.
Right.
I have not experienced where a young man or a young woman said, I'm not going to play here if you don't do this. I have experienced it on more than one occasion where a parent, guardian, or handler comes in and says, such and such is leaving because this school over here is going to pay them. If you don't pay us, this is what we're going to do. And I know of a couple of occasions where the student athlete never even knew that somebody was speaking on his or her behalf. And they were stunned when they learned that was going on. They didn't learn it from us, but they learned that it was. So student athletes, these, with all due respect, these kids are still being kids. I mean, right. you watch that golf celebration, you watch basketball celebration, you watch the baseball where they're hanging off the dugout and doing all those dances. I mean, they're all just having fun playing the game. They're not sitting there thinking about, hey, this may get me $25,000 more. They're not thinking about that. Now, there may be some exceptions to that, but those guys are just having fun. But so, Ronnie, thanks for letting me go back to that. But the way you prioritize it is that, what we do is we have a strategic plan this, 3 or 5 years as far as facilities go, if we're talking about facilities. But you also have to think about services you want to provide, because in the last 15 years, mental health care has taken on a lot of our time and attention, as it should, as compared to facilities. Life skills in the early 90s, where we felt like, these student athletes are just coming in here getting a degree. We're not teaching them how to, balance a checkbook, wash their own laundry, whatever it may be. Life skills, how to interact with people, how to sit at a dinner table, how to do an interview. So we all adopted life skills. There's actually an NCAA mandate that we had to adopt life skills. So there's certain programs and services that you have to bake into your budget as well, because it's what you're trying to do for these students. You're trying to impact their lives in a positive way, and you're trying to make them better people when they leave here. And Auburn has been incredibly successful year in and year out in doing that. But what you do, Ronnie, is you come back to the question that was asked earlier about, how do you determine what a facility is? Number one is it's the demand. How are we doing, or can we win in this conference with what we have? That's usually our first test, is that, our facilities, are we losing prospective student athletes because we're not as competitive in a certain area? So you have to get on a level playing field with the SEC first off in all of your sports and all of your support services. And then because of the conference we're in, usually that satisfies nationally. But you also want to look around nationally and say who's winning national championships and what do they have that we don't have that would enhance our capability of doing that. Then you begin to cultivate donors. And oftentimes, Ronnie, you hit on a great point. Oftentimes we go back to the same people. But what you do is, and what they've done at Tigers Unlimited and at Gator Boosters is that they brought enough people in to start cultivating people that are in their 30s and 40s that don't necessarily have the wealth right now because they're raising their own family, but they will in the future, and put them in the pipeline and give them a relationship and let them understand what you're doing in college athletics so that when they do get that wealth, they have the heart and the passion that says, you know what, I want to help. So it is an incredible balance, Rodney, in cultivation and solicitation and taking care of your current donors. But those two institutions do it extremely well. University of Florida and Auburn do it extremely well.
Bill?
Well, that's really interesting. Because I just have wondered a lot about just how it works, not what's needed or what's not needed or whatever. I mean, obviously, everybody would like to have brand new everything, and I know as an athletic director, you have to figure out with a limited ability to do things to prioritize things, and I think that the baseball, the two major things that have happened in the last decade or so, Neville Arena and the renovation, like if you want to call it, or remodeling or whatever, of Plainsman Park, have been massively successful. And I'm sure the north end zone is going to be similar, I would think. And I know a lot of people are going to be happy to have that other video board on the other end, so they can look at it, because a good bit of the stadium, when you just have one, got their back to it. That I think that's going to be cool. And I know there'll be more amenities, and premium seating seems to be the thing right now. I mean, I don't think you would disagree with me. I don't think Jordan-Hare Stadium needs to be any bigger.
More capacity? Absolutely not.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it would accomplish anything to say, hey, now we got 100,000 seats. Right.
I think it's okay if you add some premium seating and decrease the size of it. Now, I'm not talking about extraordinarily, but just like Neville Arena, it needs to be special when you walk in there.
Right.
But hey, look, Auburn has traditionally and will continue to take care of the grassroots fans. When we first came out in, I guess it was in 2005, and changed the seating, the cost per seat based on where you sat. Right. We always made sure we took care of the people that have been there for a long time. We want to keep the legacy going. That's what's so, going back to the student athlete you were talking about, Philip, when her mother came on campus, there's a feel for it. It's not just bricks and mortar. There's a spirit about this place, and it's how we care about each other and how we love our neighbor, and respect fellow man. And so all those things have to happen. But so one thing, going back to your question, Ronnie, about raising money, is that when you create more premium space, you generally are able to identify prospective new donors, because now you have a new level of seating or an additional level of seating, and somebody raises their hand and said, hey, you know what, I'd love one of those premium seats for X dollars. Say, okay, well, if you can spend that on this, let's start talking to them about whether they want to make a capital campaign gift. So it gives you a pipeline also of other prospective donors to do other things. And the other thing that it does, which is what I'm sure they're doing at Auburn, is that it creates more revenue so you can support, because every one of these schools are going to have to come up with $20.5 million extra dollars in the next year. $20.5 extra million.
And then it goes up from there, doesn't it?
Well, it can,
Yeah.
So, and folks, that's for the NIL. When the House case settles, if it settles as we think it might, that means that NIL money comes from the athletics department, and the cap on that right now is $20.5 million per athletic department. Well, that's money they haven't been spending. But
Right.
Historically, Auburn, since the '80s, since the early '80s, since we got Alabama to come on campus and play us, and the things that we've done on campus, we've been a really healthy place financially in athletics and the university. So we'll be able to figure that out. But that's $20.5 extra million.
Oh yeah.
In about that's about a 12% budget increase for Auburn if they got a $160 million budget. So something like that. But anyway, they're doing a great job, and it looks great, and it's fun to watch these student athletes celebrate when they win, and how much they love Auburn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people get jaded, I think, and say, well, nobody comes to Auburn or wherever because they love it. They just come because they came to the highest bidder. And while I'm sure that happens sometimes, I still think when you're around these kids that they really do care about Auburn University. Most of them, at least. And even if they don't necessarily, when they come here, they come to care, and not just about the university, the community, and all those things. And I guess I wish people wouldn't get so jaded, as I said, that they just assume that everything has changed. There's no question about that. But they just assume that that people like to say, well, they're professionals now. Well, I guess you could make that case because they're getting paid, but they're still college kids, and they still act like college kids.
That's right.
And they still have the same kind of hopes and dreams that other college kids have. I mean. So now I don't know if somebody had given me $1 million when I was 19 years old, that wouldn't have been pretty, probably. I probably wouldn't have dealt with it very well. Right. But now, on the other hand, if somebody give me $1 million, I think that'd be okay. But and by the way, y'all need to call Ronnie Sanders. He got lots of money hid out nobody knows about.
I wish.
Philip, I could easily become jaded in this, but when you talk to the student athletes, I mean, quite frankly, we're the adults that screwed this thing up.
Yes.
I mean, about 12 years ago, the late Commissioner Mike Schleib, a dear friend, he tried to institute us giving student athletes more money, and everybody except the SEC, their heads like exploded. What are you talking about? We can't do that. And he said, there's going to come a day and time where we're going to wish we had. And so, the first thing was the cost of attendance. Well, we should have done more than that. And, he suggested at the time, and Greg Sankey did too. But here we are now. And so, just think about this. You're 17 or 18 years old, okay? You live in a home, and your mama may be working 1 or 2 jobs, and you can come to a university. They're going to give you $50,000 a year, which may be as much as she's making or your dad's making, or you can go somewhere and they're going to give you $100,000. How could you literally look in your mom and daddy's face and say, you know what, I'm going to take the $50,000? I mean,
right. That's an issue. I agree.
There's no doubt about it. And so, what we found when we did surveys with cost of attendance years ago, about 8 years ago, 50% of that money was going home to mama.
Yeah.
I mean, it was going back home to help mom. And, and dad, and sometimes it was a guardian, sometimes it was a handler. But hey, your point, Philip, is 100% where I am. Is that kids will still be kids, and they love Auburn. And if they don't love Auburn when they get here, I mean, just look at look at Caldwell and look at Dillon and Pettifer. I mean, they had a bunch of options. Janai Broome had a bunch of. I'm just naming basketball because that's the ones that I'm most familiar with right now. There's probably some on baseball and football and every sport. They all stayed because of something different here.
Right. No, there's no doubt about it. Last season's basketball team was a really unique collection of really enjoyable guys to be around. It really was. And of course, now another thing this new now you got an entirely new team coming.
Right.
Except for Pettiford, I think, is the only one that's on the roster that was on the roster last year.
Well, that Bruce Pearl, he'll coach them hard. And
he got from some very, very talented guys too, and that's the difference. I mean, just think if Jabari Smith, if it was 20 years ago, he would have been here for 4 years,
right?
And or at least 3. But now a guy like that, I mean, he's one and done. And but I think when Auburn played in the Final Four this year, they had 5 seniors in the starting lineup.
Yeah,
and that's
amazing.
That's and when Florida International, which Florida was it that made a run to the Final Four? Florida Atlantic, whichever one it was. Mm-hmm. One of those Floridas. That's what they had. They didn't have NBA players. But they had a lot of experience. And you're seeing now in basketball that makes a big difference.
It does.
And if you're a senior and I'm a freshman and I'm more talented than you, I still might not be as good as you at playing college basketball.
That's right.
Because you've been through the whole thing and you've been through it all and you know what to expect and all those things. And but it's changed, but it's hanging in there, I guess. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this house case.
Yeah.
And I'm a little troubled sometimes by the house, the name house is an Arizona State swimmer.
Right.
And who had no expectation of getting any significant amount of money. And it just seems like what you got is lawyers going out and recruiting people to put their name, to allow their name to be put on a lawsuit, so then they can make it a class action lawsuit. And the ones who get most of the money, the person who's going to get, the people who are really going to get rich from this house settlement are Kessler and his helpers.
No doubt about it. House came out 2 weeks ago and made the comment. He said, I never expected all this, and I haven't even testified. And all this is going on around me, and it's got my name on it.
Exactly.
I mean, but hey, it goes back to my other point. The adults are the one that screwed this up. That's who's doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, this quote, student athlete advocates that are, to me, and I guess this sounds not good, but it's a whole lot of people see a whole lot of money and trying to get their hands on some of it.
That's right. Exactly right.
Jay, before we go, I got one more question for you. We talked about, Philip mentioned Texas Tech. Talk about the impact of mega donors and facilities like T. Boone Pickens at Oklahoma State, Phil Knight at Oregon. Does Auburn have any of those guys? And how many places around the conference have those guys? And what kind of impact do they make?
Excuse me, Ryan, what was the last thing you said?
And what kind of impact can they make?
I don't know that if we have any of that. Well, I guess probably just based on my, past experience, things could have changed in the last few years. But somebody like a Raymond Harbert would be, I guess, our closest one. But he's done things for everybody. The College of Business and athletics, and there's probably several other places he and his family have contributed. Because they're giving people. But we don't have a name like that right now. But we have a lot of names that that give at significant dollar amounts. I mean, just Walton Ginger Waltos back, the athletic facility, and Bill and Connie Neville. I mentioned the McWhorters earlier. Mentioned the Harberts. I mean, we have, it's really Auburn being Auburn. We don't have one go-to. We have a lot of people that care about this place. Not that other places don't, but it goes back to, Ronnie, your other question is that if you have somebody like that, then you may go to them too often. And I think Auburn and other institutions as well have done a really good job of cultivating relationships with, Bill Neville. He's a Baylor. He's a Rice graduate, but he loves Auburn, and so it just depends on that cultivation. We don't necessarily have anybody that I can think of that is like that. If they are, they're not in the public like those guys are. We don't have a Jerry Jones. I can't tell you the owners of any other team, but everybody knows Jerry Jones owns the Dallas Cowboys because he's always out there. We don't, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying he is, but there, probably there's some people that think, well, this guy talks a lot. I just don't pay attention to it maybe. But we've done Auburn is such a special place from the standpoint of, and a lot of schools are the same way at Florida. There was a couple of mega donors, but everybody pitched in, everybody helped because everybody cared and everybody understood the mission and vision of the university. So that's most helpful. Hey, one thing I would like to say that before we get off is that just a book that I'm reading that I'd encourage anybody to read is called Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table by Louis Giglio. Whether you're a Christian or not, it's a great read to talk about how you think about things. As a professional, as a business person, or just a retired person or a young person, but don't give the enemy a seat at your table by Louis Giglio. It's really helped me think a little bit more clearly and catch negative thoughts when they come into my mind. Even though I have some occasion when I watch some sports teams, negative thoughts come into my mind.
It's interesting you mentioned Rice University. But my oldest son, who has a chemical engineering degree and a master's in physics from Auburn, got his PhD in chemical engineering at Rice, and which is a beautiful. Have you ever been there, Jay?
I have.
It's a beautiful campus, and they got this big stadium. It's really old. It's a big football stadium. And I asked him. I said, "What's it like on a football Saturday?" He said, "Like any other day." He said, "He said you can't even tell what's going on." And he said, "When I first got here," he says, riding the campus transportation around campus, which he had done at Auburn too. And he said, and I was on the bus with some guys, and they said they were football players. And he said, and I thought, these players don't look the same as the ones I ran into when I was at Auburn. But it's, there's so much special to me about college athletics. And I guess the thing that's always bothered me is that there seems to be you hear about, free labor and all this stuff as related to college athletes, and the benefits of going to being an athlete at a place like Auburn or Florida or Georgia or Alabama or wherever, that lasts for the rest of your life. And as I've told people a lot, I said, I know people well from 50-something years of, and even longer. I mean, that played before I was doing what I do. And I don't know one of those people who would does not cherish the experience they had as a college athlete and the lifelong friends they made and the professional connections they made. Because if you go to Auburn and you keep your nose clean and you do it right and there's going to be people out there waiting to hire you when you're done.
That's right. No doubt about it.
And
because
that seems to have been lost in the last number of years. That there's more to it than just money.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, Philip, that we keep talking about men's basketball because that's on the front of a lot of people's mind. But it'll be interesting how many times these guys get together over the next years and years and years. The relationships they built are incredible, and they'll be in each other's weddings and be there when there's sad moments and good moments, and be there in the middle of the night, get a call. I mean, I got buddies right now that I hadn't talked to maybe in a year, and I can pick up the phone right now, and I bet you they'd be here.
Yeah.
And vice versa. It's just that there's a spirit there. There's a relationship there that it's a bond that it's unbreakable.
The 1972 Auburn football team, those guys who are old because they're about my age, they are extraordinarily close still to this day.
Yeah.
And that's an experience money can't buy.
No doubt about it.
And I got a lot of good friends on that team because, like I said, I was young. We were basically the same age, and I have a lot of good friends that played on that team. But it's not just them. I mean, even more recent. I mean, every athlete says, "Boy, I wish this was this way or this was that way," and I'm sure in your time and in other people's time, you say, "Man, I wish I had more money." But there's something about I heard I don't even remember who the player was, somewhere either at Michigan or Ohio State, talking about sharing an apartment with 3 teammates while he was in school, and it was one of the greatest experiences of his life.
Absolutely.
We didn't have anything.
Yeah.
But I just think a lot of that's lost, and I think that's unfortunate.
It is. And hey, talking about the 72 team, they should be SEC champions.
Yeah.
They beat Alabama, and Alabama played one more conference game than Auburn did. They played Vanderbilt, and so they gave the conference championship to Alabama, and Auburn had already beaten them.
Yeah. They had an interesting thing about that. I went back and looked at this. The year before, Auburn played 7 conference games.
Yeah.
You could play however many you wanted to.
Right.
And you were supposed to play 6. This was in the 60s. You were supposed to play 6, but the SEC didn't schedule anybody.
Right.
But if you only had 5, then they would designate a non-conference game as a conference game. And it was different. The SEC office used to be at the Redmont Hotel in Birmingham. And it was the commissioner and a secretary and Scoop Hudgens. That was it.
Yeah.
That was the SEC office.
Yeah.
And
things have changed.
Oh, man. As it ever.
Yeah.
Well, guys.
Auburn Athletic Department used to be in Petrie Hall.
I remember at the Coliseum before 1989, you had two assistant coaches to an office. It was 2 desks, and in the middle there was a projector.
Exactly.
And that was it.
Exactly. In one of those offices, there was 3. There was Larry Blakeney, Wayne Bolt, and Coach Paul Davis.
Yeah.
There were 3 of them in one office.
Now, those weren't very big offices.
What's that?
So those weren't very big rooms.
No, they weren't very big at all. They weren't very big at all. Once you put 2 desks in there, there was room for one more chair, and that was it. Oh man! But
guys, I've enjoyed it.
It created some great bonds. What's that?
No, I said, guys, I've enjoyed it.
Me too.
Always.